Kicking off this new season of No Cost Extension is a fascinating conversation with Radhika Piramal. Radhika Piramal is the Executive Director and Vice Chairperson of VIP Industries, India's largest luggage company. Radhika also holds a number of senior leadership positions in corporate India across various companies and brands. She's also a charity trustee holding trustee positions at Dasra UK and Give Out, an award-winning international LGBTQ Community Foundation. Radhika Piramal is a leading LGBTQ+ advocate and one of the 3 Indian philanthropists supporting the Pride Fund, India's first LGBTQIA+ philanthropy fund. In this conversation, Deval and Radhika speak about Radhika's personal journey, the need for the Pride Fund in India today, and the path ahead. The Pride Fund was launched in February 2025 and is led by 3 philanthropists: Radhika Piramal, Keshav Suri, the Executive Director of the Lalit Suri Hospitality Group and the founder of the Keshav Suri Foundation, and Parmesh Shahani, Head of Godrej DEI Labs from the Godrej Industries Group.
Welcome, Radhika. This is so exciting for me because we have been friends for many years, in fact, decades. But to begin with, welcome to No Cost Extension. And yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit about your journey in the community.
Well, thanks so much, Deval, for having me here. I definitely feel like I'm talking to an old friend. We've known each other 25 years. You know, there's so many different journeys, Deval. There's professional journeys, there's personal journeys. I think because this discussion is about the Pride Fund, let me start with my personal journey. So, you know, I'm 46 years old now. I think I was 12 or 13 or 14 when I started to realize that my schoolmates were a little different than I was because they were very excited about boys and I wasn't. I just wasn't so excited by it. I didn't know what else I was excited by, but I knew it wasn't these crushes that my friends in school seemed to be having. And then 14, 15, 16, 17, I was 17 when I had my first romantic feelings for a girl, which fortunately for me at the time were reciprocated. And it led to just a very nice first relationship between 2 girls, aged 17 and 16. And in hindsight, I see how wonderful that was as a defining experience. For me, it was a positive experience. It was exciting. It was romantic. It was loving. And we were still in school. 16 and 17 is still in school. So because of this, we both told our mothers that we had a girlfriend. And this was a very big shock to my mother. I'm from a business Marwari family. And in a business Marwari family, and I guess maybe for all Indians, you know, you want to be successful in professional life and succeed, but you mainly want to get married and have kids. That seems to be the defining goal for most Indians, and followed closely by what will society think of your match, you know? And so I knew from a fairly early age that, you know, this seemed unrealistic to me. And when I first saw my mom, she really was very worried for me. She was worried about my reputation. She was worried about her reputation. She was worried that I wouldn't meet anybody, that I would be alone in my life as one grows, and who would be there for me after my parents were no more, which is maybe also one of the reasons why Indians place such a high value on marriage. Anyway, that relationship ended. It was a teenage relationship. Life moved on. I think telling my whole coming out story in one shot is difficult. Maybe I could take this opportunity to explain to people that if you're a member of the LGBTQ community, which is lesbian, bisexual, gay, transgender, or queer, then coming out is not a one-time thing. Anytime you introduce yourself to anybody you meet for the first time, it's a choice whether to come out or not. So it's really or generally how it's seen is, have you told your family, meaning your parents? Have they told their society? Have you come out in your workplace? And have you come out in the world? And I have a very interesting story on how I came out to the world. Maybe leave that for later.
No, but thank you for sharing. I think, like you were saying, this was the mid to late 90s.
Yeah.
Where you were going through this. And at that time, this community, it wasn't spoken about as much, even globally, much less locally. To have business family parents, or I would say just conservative parents, which most parents were at that stage. The fact that you had the courage to speak to your mom, the fact that you had the courage to even go into a relationship, the fact that you've clearly have not just yourself, but you've helped so many other people along the way, I think has just been tremendous. And so when you were sort of, like you were saying, transitioning from talking to your parents about this and being open with them, when did it start sort of with your friends, with others? Because I'm sure that would have been as difficult, if not even more, because these are people who you see eye to eye with. And all of a sudden you're saying something which they may, at least back in the 90s, could have then had sort of negative responses to that.
Yes, and the biggest fear about this negative response is one never wants to lose one's friends or family, especially for something as unfair as being judged for something which A, is nothing to be ashamed of, and B, part of how we are born. So I was less worried about telling my friends, and with my sister on my side, I felt like pretty strong there. I went to university and my parents said, you sort of do what you want on campus, but can we not get any stories about what you're doing back home, please? So I try to keep a low profile. And I'll say it's when I moved to the US and I spent 5 years in the US from 2004 till 2009, that a real meaningful change in my coming out happened. So I went to Harvard Business School. I met a lot of other gays and lesbians who were far more out than me. So my fellow MBA students, but they were just out and they had a confidence that I didn't, and they could not understand why I was not more confident. So if Radhika, if you're from a good business family, you've got enough resources, you're at Harvard Business School, what exactly is holding you back was the question that they posed to me. And I reflected on it, and slowly, I got the courage to come out. And then I worked for Bain & Company directly after my MBA, and they had an amazing employee resource group called Be Glad. And I'm always forever grateful to them because there were out gay partners at work. I could see that being out and being gay was not going to hold back anyone in this firm in terms of their profession. At Harvard Business School, there was the most popular professor was an out lesbian, and she ran a class on consumer marketing and strategy. Yeah, Fran. So I saw all these examples of leadership, and I thought, I should use, if I am in a privileged position, I should at least be less scared. And so I was very confident, and I was very lucky. Whilst in New York, I met my then girlfriend, now my partner of 18 years, and my wife of 14 years, Amanda, who you've met. And she agreed with me. We dated for a while. She agreed to move to Mumbai from New York with me. And we moved back to India in 2009 and really enjoyed almost a decade together in India, which is when I was outed by the tabloid, the Mumbai Mirror. And so that massive public outing happened because a tabloid wrote a story about me. And I went, this is an interesting story. So Amanda and I got married, and we got legally married in the UK. And if we get the opportunity, I'd love to talk about same-sex marriage equality in this podcast. So Amanda and I got married in the UK, and we knew that this might get covered in India. Like, it might not, it might. So in the end, there was just a very small article in the Mumbai Mirror. But the next day, after that article, or the morning of that article, when I went to work at VIP Luggage, the watchman was reading the newspaper at the gate as I drove in. And I thought, this is going to be an interesting day. So then I walked to my cabin, and the first person who's waiting for me is our head of marketing. And he says, so Radhika, this has come in the newspaper and the PR agency is on the line. What do I tell them? And I said, well, just tell them it's all true and there's nothing further to add. And that was the day when I told our entire leadership team at VIP, because I wanted to address the questions. And so things that my parents knew, my family knew, society knew, because to be fair, I'm saying I got married, so there were 120 people at this wedding. So it's not like a secret exactly, but that's different from being in the newspaper. And so then time went on, and I want to credit Parmesh Shani from that time Godrej Culture Lab, now Godrej DEI Lab. He said, Radhika, if your name's already out there in the press, why don't you take charge of the narrative? And why don't you do good stories on this instead of sort of being worried about fear or shame? And in 2015, I did a talk at the same auditorium where we're going to do a talk tomorrow. And I talked about what it is to come out, what is the impact on my personal and professional life. And it was the front page of the Economic Times the next day. And then since then, I've just been on my journey of advocating for justice, equality, dignity for the LGBT community in India. Our voices really need to be amplified.
No, thank you for that. And again, Parmesh, I think, was, at least in my mind, at the forefront of writing a book about this. And so I think it's great that many of you have sort of come together to talk about your stories, to make it sort of more mainstream. I mean, back in the 90s, I remember even in banking, when people got promoted to sort of the highest level, one question would come up: are they married or not? And we all knew what that question was for. Unfortunately, it was still a hidden thing. And this is in the US in the 90s. And so the fact that even, like you were saying, in sort of the mid 2000s, firms like Bain and others realized that this is ridiculous, that we're making people hide, or we're not giving promotions, or we're treating them differently is absolute nonsense. And the fact that you have been part of that movement clearly in the Indian corporate sector to speak about this, to make it normal, to be sort of a guiding voice for so many others. I'm assuming all of these things combined really is why you decided to create the Pride Fund. So if you can talk a little bit about the Pride Fund, how did you come up with this idea? How long has it taken you to get here? And what's going to happen tomorrow? Because you just mentioned tomorrow. That would be fantastic for our listeners to hear about this.
So I'm so excited. Tomorrow, we, the 3 patron funders of the Pride Fund, are going to launch the Pride Fund, which essentially is going to fundraise from well-intentioned foundations, individuals, and companies to raise funds for the queer community in India. We're going to support grassroots NGOs, generally led by queer leadership, who serve the most vulnerable and marginalized queer communities across India, especially in regions, not focusing on the metro cities, but trying to go beyond. And if I can just take a minute to explain what are the needs of the LGBTQ community. So what faces a person if they decide that they want to be honest with themselves and not live a lie, not live how their parents want them to, but just to live how their truth. They often have to leave their homes. Not everyone is as lucky as I am, where my parents find they were a little upset in the beginning, but they came around. Some people, there's no acceptance. And so then you have to leave, and often without any backup, no social security. And then you have to find a place which will give you a job so you can get financial independence because, there's nothing coming from the government, there's nothing coming from your family. And this is very hard. This is very hard, especially if these things are happening when usually a person's a teenager. I told you my experiences happened at 16 and 17. So even if it's 18 or 19 or 21 in India, it's difficult to leave home and make your own way. And so these NGOs that we're going to fund, they serve communities such as these to help people establish honest and truthful lives while feeling proud of themselves. They help people access basic medical services, access to justice. So if a trans person needs a correct identity document, or if a lesbian 18-year-old has run away from home and her parents are trying to get her back, they would give a safe space. And they work all over India. And we hope that by doing these grassroots movements, we will be reaching people who don't otherwise have access, even to the sort of institutional providers of funding or elites in Mumbai and Delhi. So we're trying to go further.
No, that's excellent. And I know one of the things we've spoken about earlier, at least, was even in Boston, you were saying how there was a community center that you had access to. If you can talk a little bit about that and how that helped you grow and prosper, because I think some of these organizations are, in essence, doing that in their localities.
Yeah, I mean, anyone listening here, I don't know if you've ever felt invisible or ever felt like a minority or ever felt that nobody in the room ever understood you, but that's how queer people feel most of the time. And so there's a real power in queer people coming together, even if it's 5 people or 10 or 20 or 15, and sharing our experiences and being together in that. And then we feel less scared and more powerful. So community drop-in centers serve this. They can offer anything from a games night to a disco night to a counseling service to a meetup for any subgroup also. So, if you're lesbian students or senior gay men, come for tea for 5 to 7 p.m. on a Tuesday. And without these physical drop-in centers, where do you go? Because this is also can be invisible, right? So if I just meet you, Deval, and we're talking about work, you present a certain way, I present a certain way. I mean, if I had long hair, you might think I was just another straight woman, right? So how would you know? And we're not going to talk about that at work. So you can go through whole life without telling anyone or being invisible. But having a drop-in center, you can go anonymously too. That's away from your workplace, away from your family. And you're going to meet 10, 15, 20 experienced, older, wise, and kind queer people like yourself. It's really an important safety net. And it's where you meet community. It's where you make friends. It's where you can find dates. I mean, I grew up in a time without the internet.
Exactly.
So these drop-in centers, it's very important that they were there.
And you were saying it also helps people just navigate, because this is difficult for everyone, like you said. And every sort of group of, whether it's friends or colleagues or family or parents or siblings, I mean, it's a different...
Yeah. I want to change gear. We're talking about how difficult it is. I also want to talk about how great it is. Because where am I now? So I've been married for many years. My full family except my wedding. My wife is absolutely a part of my family. My nephews call her Masi. And it's just so beautiful. And I want to give our listeners a hope that this is entirely possible in their lives if they can find workplace institutions to support them. And if they find ways in which they can approach their family to ask not just for tolerance, but for full acceptance. Like, why should we as queer people accept anything less than what you have? And I want to just say that workplaces can offer a great solace and energy here. Because sometimes families are slow to change, but if you've moved city and you've moved from anywhere in India to Mumbai, Delhi, or Bangalore, or Kolkata, and you're working for a progressive company that embraces DEI and, people from all stripes of life, then you really find a freedom. Like, work can be a home away from home in a way that for queer people that I don't know if straight people fully appreciate how nice it can be. And there are amazing places that do that. Not everybody, but let's say Godrej is one of them.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think you've also, being on the board of Dasra, but even before, you've seen even in Dasra, we have so many individuals here who feel comfortable in speaking about it and not feeling uptight, not feeling that they're being looked at as anything else, but part of the team.
And you know how much energy goes into lying every day, Deval? You know how much energy that takes away from productive pursuits like doing better at your job or being a better partner or being better anything in society?
No, exactly. So going back to Pride Fund, what made you sort of think about this? How long did it take you to conceptualize, to come up with this idea? You've been doing different things in the sector. Why Pride Fund now?
I'm going to credit Dasra with a lot of it.
Oh, you don't need to. This is not a Dasra podcast.
I had this idea with a friend over dinner last January because I was so disappointed by the Supreme Court verdict. And until then, I had been doing my advocacy in the form of giving DEI talks at company or giving media interviews and generally trying to be there as that available, visible role model, the same way Professor Fran had been there for me and that senior gay partner had been there for me. But then this court case judgment from the Supreme Court was so disappointing that I thought, okay, let's try and raise money. Let's try and put money where our mouth is. Because just talking doesn't seem to be doing anything. So let's fundraise. And there I think I'm in a unique position to both be part of this business world, which is very, capitalist and for-profit, as well as this grassroots community world. So I thought maybe I can play that bridge. We can fundraise and we can give. And I had that idea in January. We started with Dasra in July. And I'm so thrilled that in less than a year, we're able to launch. And it's definitely a testament to the agility and expertise of Dasra.
No, not at all. Again, Radhika's a board member, so don't believe everything she says. She's being very, very nice and kind, but it was your determination. You're getting it off the ground. You're bringing others along with you.
Genuinely, I was just going to donate some money to some NGOs, and Dasra's team I think it was Shelja and Neera, and you said, Radhika, can you think about this a bit bigger? Think about it a bit more systematically, institutionally, get 2-3 more funders in. We can help you with the process of, finding the right NGOs. Dasra's written this amazing research report. I'm so proud of it. The text is amazing. It's, written by the community, for the community. So thank you.
As you go down this journey, and I think it's interesting because you've also been a giver for many, many years, supporting various activities, both at a personal level as well as through CSR. What made you sort of think about a collaborative platform versus doing things on your own? Because many philanthropists feel like they have more control if they do things on their own. In the business world, they collaborate a lot. They feel like, to a certain extent, this is their time to have full authority. Why did you decide to go down maybe a slightly more complicated path of doing something in collaboration with others?
I think we can achieve more scale. I really do. Also, the people I'm collaborating with, Parmesh Shani from Godrej and Keshav Suri from the Lalit group of hotels and the Keshav Suri Foundation, they are both out gay men who have been on the same journey of advocacy and visibility. So I just knew the three of us, if we put our minds together, we'll be able to fundraise more and reach more people than if I try and do this on my own. So that's the most practical reason. And it's also more fun. And Dasra told me if I do a collaboration, it will be more powerful.
Yes, we did. And I think it's, to your point, I think there are a couple of reasons why it makes sense. And I think if you can speak about some of these, but at least from our perspective, first of all, no matter what topic or issue one tries to support, it needs greater capital than what one individual can do. Whether that's individual is the Indian government, whether that individual is Bill Gates, whether that individual is Radhika Piramal.
Yeah, absolutely.
At least our experience in 25 years is that if you bring more people together, you bring in larger pools of capital, which is important. I think number two, and you sort of touched upon this, you bring in different perspectives and lived experiences that one may not have.
The whole process takes longer, but the outcome's better. This process of getting alignment and adding nuance to things, this is a brand new fund. It hasn't been done in India before. It's considered a niche issue by many, although I would like to urge my listeners to saying, you know someone who's queer. You might not know you know them, but they're there in your life. So, we're 1 in 10 in the population.
In your journey of also looking at what's being done in India, thank you for creating this report and launching it tomorrow and sharing it with so many others. And we'll have links to this on the webpage as well. But you also have been sort of speaking to global movements as well. And so in that, it just so happens somebody I used to babysit when I was young in Sugar Land, Texas, is somebody that you were speaking to as well. Alap, exactly. And so what are some of the, I guess, learnings that you've seen from how, whether it's Amplify Change or other groups have sort of supported these movements? What are some of the learnings, and what are some of the things you think that need to be different in the Indian context?
I think what I've learned from there is the power of convening, of amplification, how you can build narratives, get groups of philanthropists together to do more. So in a way, what you're discussing about this collaboration. I think what's unique in the Indian context is, like I said, this funders seem to think that, okay, if I'm already doing education or health or girls, this LGBTQ thing is not for me. But I would like to say that there are queer people everywhere, and we are all studying, and we are all learning, and we are all working, and we are all playing sports. So fine, if you have a mainstream program and you cannot give separately to queer NGOs, that's fine. But within your mainstream programming, can you at least ensure that it's queer friendly, that you tackle discrimination, bullying, toxicity, and, if you're not sure how to start, how to do that, do it to avoid those things for the women in your group, and then automatically things will become better for the LGBT people in your group or anybody marginalized in your group. If you design for the most vulnerable person in whichever your group is, it will be better for everybody in the group.
Yeah, so having a greater sense of intentionality.
Yes.
Across anything you support.
Any program you're supporting, put a queer lens on it and just see, is it fair to the people who are participating, the beneficiaries?
Some of this, I think, will come out in the report. I think also the goal of the Pride Fund, or any fund for that matter, will not ever be to support every single organization out there, because that's impossible. But to your point, even having literature and how to have that queer lens, because I know from a development standpoint, we've had a gender lens. We've had a caste lens. So there are different lenses we put on. And I think even giving that framework, I feel, because so many organizations, I think, will have members in their team as well as the communities they serve that are part of the queer community, but they have no idea.
Shall I tell you my story about Dasra?
Please.
So, you and me were chatting more than a year ago. I said I wanted to do this. You said, why don't you think of a collaborative? And I said, that sounds wonderful. Who's going to do the research? And you said, actually, it was Neera. She said, we'll hire somebody. I said, okay, I'll send you a couple of resumes. Didn't work out. And then you invited me to speak at your company-wide, organization-wide retreat. And I said, can I just do a call out? Because you have 200 employees. I have a feeling you have a few of us in your midst. You just don't know it. And so y'all gave me the mic and I said, hey, I want to do this research project. We're going to talk about the state of LGBTQIA plus civil society in India. And I'm going to ask volunteers. And then before we knew it, we had, I'm hoping, I won't say their names, but 5 out queer people at Dasra who put their hands up to sign the report. And we did not have to hire anybody from outside. So what's this tell us?
Whether you're a philanthropist or an NGO leader, because both of those sort of stakeholder groups are the ones who listen to no cost extension more so. And then, of course, academia. I think there's ways of inculcating this lens into everything you do. And I say that because at Dasra, we've been very, very lucky to support funds like Pride Fund and collaboratives. And again, we're also very cognizant that this is a drop in the ocean. But if we can create open source material that all funding uses certain principles, then you don't have to be, for example, a funder A or B or C. It's everything you fund will have this lens.
Yes. And I got to say, I'm here to talk about the launch of the Pride Fund, and I'm super excited about it. But I think that any contribution to the movements of equal rights in India is welcome, in whatever form that takes.
At least my view is you should judge a country's success by how they treat the most vulnerable of citizens. And that vulnerability happens in multiple forms, whether it's religion, race, caste, color of skin,
absolutely,
gender. And you have to really focus on not even a handout, but just try to level the playing field, for God's sake, because that itself is all what people want.
And a bit of dignity.
And a bit through that, exactly.
Yeah.
It's just leveling the playing field. No one is asking for a handout. I think another thing that we're excited about the Pride Fund is the need of domestic funding. And like I said, you've spoken to a lot of people. Do you have a sense of how much domestic funding even goes to groups?
I think it is less than 10 crores. If that, I feel it may be less than 5 crores. We know that of the top 50 donors in this country, only 1 or 2 give explicitly to this. I can think of 3 funders I know who are open to it and who give it, but don't title it that. They're not super vocal by calling it an LGBTQ kind of giving. So yeah, I think it's less than 10 crores. And I think that's shameful for a population of how many billion are we now?
1.4 billion. So again, the 10% stats, we're talking about 140 million.
So you do 10 crores by 140 million and see, where are we?
Yeah.
We need more. I really am going to be going out with my tin cup all this year and asking everybody I know to please contribute to the Pride Fund.
No, and we're also, our listeners will hear from some of the organizations you've selected, and we'll be putting their information up as well for people to donate directly to them too. Right. I think the goal right now is to get as much capital out the door to people who are doing this.
The need of the hour is Indian philanthropists for Indian beneficiaries. And to all the people outside of India listening to this, if you have guts, keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah. Thank you, Radhika. This has been a great conversation. We're going to follow this up with conversations with some of the individuals that you're supporting, These are individuals who started their organizations and their movements well before the Pride Fund was started, and it's amazing. They will live far after the Pride Fund stops supporting them. And I think there's so many great organizations that have existed in our country or that will exist thanks to your work. And really our goal, I think, within the Pride Fund is just to highlight, showcase, create a platform for people to become aware and people to support. Because 140 million people is not a small amount of individuals that need some level of support.
And the stories of all of these leaders and their courage and their resilience, Deval, you and I can sit here in our shirts, in Mumbai. We've still grown up with a lot of privilege. So to fight without anybody behind your back is really tough. So these are just amazing, courageous stories. And thank you for amplifying them.
And can't wait till a few years from now for us to do a recap on where we are.
Absolutely.
And how 100 crores have been going
exactly.
to these organizations.
Exactly. That's right.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to No Cost Extension. Go to dasra.org for more details.